Hello. I had a bit of a falling out with an old friend the other day. And, well, I'm not sure we'll ever get back together, not quite on the same footing. We were talking over the phone. I've taken to ringing or Skyping friends these days, especially the ones I know who are alone. And we were chatting about the current situation. Most Scots are constitutionally pretty gloomy, and this present disaster was a fine opportunity for him to indulge that characteristic. And even worse, as he is still living in Scotland, he had a point. He was quite pessimistic about the possibility of his job, disappearing up the spout as he hears of closures going on all over the place. Also, there was talk by the leader of the Scottish National Party, Nicola Sturgeon, she's called the First Minister, isn't she, to make the lockdown rules even stricter than in England. So that had done absolutely nothing to improve his mood. I mentioned something about where the virus came from. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was probably something along the lines of we're all in the soup, probably because of some carelessness in a laboratory on the other side of the world. And at that point, the whole tone of the conversation changed. From him being just unhappy and morose and me commiserating, it sort of turned into a confrontation. But, when I mentioned that laboratory thing, I was holding the phone and, like in the cartoons, you see the frost just sort of crackling up the phone cable. Well, I could actually see the icicles marching up the cable. It just went really quiet. And then he shot back, "It's because the Chinese eat bats. That's all." And I said, well, look, there's a mounting body of evidence to suggest that if it wasn't the wet market, whence came this particular disease, it could have been a laboratory. No, it's a conspiracy theory, he said. And I said, look, a conspiracy theory is when, people say it's a ploy to get us all vaccinated with nano trackers or something. No. It's a conspiracy theory to say it's a manufactured virus, he said. And I explained what I knew. And it's just a theory, but it's not a conspiracy theory, but it is something that legitimate researchers have to consider and are considering. And so I'm going to tell you why I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, to at least consider the possibility that the virus was engineered. And also, I want to say it's been so debilitating to the Chinese economy that I can't see any conceivable reason why they would have let it go deliberately. I can see a reason for them staying quite quiet once it had got loose in China. That's another matter. But the weird thing about this virus is that the virus itself, the ball shape we see on the illustrations, that apparently is the sort of virus that's found in bats. It contains all the characteristics of a known bat virus. But the spike protein on the virus, the little bits that stick out and slot the virus into the human lung tissue, they're characteristic of another sort of coronavirus, and there are hundreds of them. But that one is carried not by bats, but by a cute little beastie called a pangolin. And this is what I managed to garner from the available information. The bat virus has 19 amino acids on its spike protein. different from what we call the COVID-19 virus. So there are 19 differences between the COVID virus and the common or garden bat virus, whichever bat virus they were talking about, because I believe there are a few of those as well. The pangolin virus, though, has only 5 different amino acids on the spike protein. So you see, that's quite close. And according to what I've read, that would mean that we have a virus that's combined 2 completely separate characteristics from 2 completely separate species. Now, as I said, this could have been engineered. It could also have happened naturally. Really weirder things have happened. But this one would have involved a pangolin giving a bat the virus, and then possibly an intermediate animal like a dog, for instance, because dogs do get SARS, they do harbour SARS viruses of their own, that a dog eating the bat that had the pangolin virus and then ending up in a wet market and being eaten by a person. That it's not entirely outside the bounds of possibility in China, is it? It could have happened. On the other hand, we can't ignore the obvious fact that it's a little over coincidental that the virus popped up in the same area where there's a laboratory, one of only 2 in the world, the other one's in America, that studies this particular type of virus. And that this virus cropped up in the same area where that lab is situated. So that's what I said. But my friend would have none of that. He got. Now, is that the sort of nonsense you're putting out in your videos? Yeah, he never watches my videos, you see. Probably this would have come up before if he had. Well, then he said, I don't watch that rubbish on the web. And frankly, I'd rather not hear it from you down the phone either. And you know what? He slammed the phone down on me. I was, as you may imagine, a little put out by this. In fact, I spent the next couple of days feeling very bad about it and wondering what I'd done wrong, how I'd expressed myself badly, how I hadn't put the argument correctly. And then I was talking to someone else yesterday, and he told me that this friend of mine in Scotland had been offered a rather well-paid job doing research. Not medical research, by the way. He's not a medical man, I hasten to add. It's probably his work would have been something to do with statistics, but research nonetheless. And the company offering him the job in a situation where jobs in Scotland are scarce, and this guy was worried about him actually losing his own job. Well, the person who offered him his job works for a Chinese company. So that answered my question about why he should be so antagonistic about my theory. Now, I happen to know that Scotland is being, I've told you, I have relatives in Scotland. Scotland is being particularly badly hit by the coronavirus domino effect, not by the deaths, although those are happening as well, sadly enough, but because the Scottish economy depends actually quite heavily on China. I didn't realise that until I started doing research and, asking around. But you see, one of Scotland's biggest earners after oil, and I'll get to that in a minute, one of its biggest earners is education. The Scots are famously well educated, and they have some very well respected universities. So let me give you some figures, and I'll put them up here. England has a population of 56 million, and Chinese students study in English universities. There are about 108,000 of them. That means that Chinese students are 0.2%, just a little under, of the English population. In Scotland, with a population of 5.5 million, there are 21,000 Chinese students, and that amounts to 0.4% of the population, double. That's a lot of students relative to the population. No doubt they all behave themselves very well and study hard, but they are a substantial chunk of the Scottish GDP. Not only the educational money they bring in, supporting universities, and various grants that the Chinese government would probably give as well. But also, they all eat, they sleep in accommodation, they frequent various places of entertainment, they buy clothes and go on trips, they use public transport, and they buy consumables. So, when those students don't turn up next year, Scotland is going to feel the pinch. And I actually, another big earner, the Edinburgh Festival, that's not going to do too well either. And, even if it's held, which it might not be. And on top of that, the perfect storm, oil prices are dropping like a stone. Scotland's entire economy is dominated by its oil industry. And the oil industry is so dire, the situation there. America is actually giving the stuff away. Here, this is from the Daily Express. The price of a barrel of the North Sea's Brent crude oil dropped more than 29% to 19.82 US dollars per barrel, its lowest level since 1999, after US crude prices dropped below $0 for the first time ever, sparking turmoil in the oil markets as the coronavirus hammers global demand. The news serves as a huge red flag for First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, because the Scottish economy, which heavily depends on oil revenue to prop it up, could be severely compromised. I'd say there's more than a could be in that, wouldn't you? So things in Scotland are going to get pretty bad. And it looks like the Chinese might be taking advantage of that. We've already heard NATO's warning that China is inquiring about or preparing to buy up failing companies. And they've already been shopping for closed colleges in America. Now it looks like they're on the hunt for entire countries, and Scotland is probably ripe for the picking. The Scottish National Party loathe England so much they would destroy Scotland, I'm sure, rather than make common cause with England. There's a deep and visceral hatred in Scotland for the English. Not all Scots, obviously, but I know enough Scottish people to be aware of this. It's called cutting off your nose to spite your face. Anyway, my friend who was so gloomy about his job prospects and so relieved that this Chinese company is offering him a life belt, well, he's not going to hear anything bad about China. And of course, he won't be the only one, especially not in his neighbourhood. So I wonder how many Scottish friends I'm going to lose to the coronavirus, and I'm not talking about them catching it. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share, because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, Good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.